Lads, lasses, and the rest of the masses, welcome back to another installment of The Grayscale. Now, this is probably going to be a bit of a shorter episode than I would normally do because, simply put, I don't want to have to talk about this game for longer than I need to. I will try and move on as swiftly as possible, and then let's talk about Benfica instead. That being said, I am going to be talking about this game in a very objective manner, though this game was rather frustrating for me as a Chelsea fan and as a person watching the game in real time. I'm obviously going to, not be too reactionary. I'm going to assess things in the way that I saw them as kind of game progressed. So the majority of the points I'm actually going to be talking about today are things up until the major refereeing decision that happened in the game that largely turned the game on its head. That being said, I think the first thing for us to address is going to go into the bad box today, and that's the major red card decision for Trevor Chalobah. Now, I could sit here and talk about how personally I don't think this is a red card because Trevor Chalobah gets a touch on the ball, but I'm not going to. What I am going to talk about is the fact that we are seeing a recurring pattern now, and I've spoken about this with some people in my comments before, but we have seen a recurring pattern now where it's becoming increasingly frustrating to see that every single time that we lose a game nowadays, it's because of one of these decisions happening, whether that's because of an unjust decision or a just decision, which I think this one is more just than unjust. It's becoming a frightening pattern that 4 out of 5 cases in our last 5 losses, it has always been down to a red card decision going against us, that being one against Flamengo, one against Bayern, one against United, and now one here as well. And the thing which is majorly frustrating about it is the fact that we were pretty comfortable throughout the majority of the game. We were playing very, very well, and it seemed like this was going to be another routine Chelsea win under Enzo Maresca. Until this silly moment happens, and the game completely flips over, we capitulate, our heads drop, and then we lose 3-1. So I'm not going to be talking specifically about this one decision from Trevor Chalobah, which admittedly I do think is rather silly. I do think he has been a bit stitched up in terms of how this move has kind of happened. I'm just going to talk about the general disciplinary problem that we've got in the team at the moment, and this lack of game understanding, knowing when to, let an attacker get a shot off on goal and trust our goalkeeper rather than try and make one of these silly challenges. The ability to recognise when it's just better to just clear your lines rather than, trying to play the ball backwards and ultimately getting one of your other centre-backs into a pickle. It's been increasingly frustrating that we do all of this good work to get ahead and, control the game, and our midfielders and our attackers are doing well, and then we have these weird defensive lapses in almost every game in recent weeks that have completely ruined it for everyone else. And that will move me on to the medium box, because the one and only player that is going into the medium box today will be Andre Santos. Again, I think that for the most part, for the majority of the game leading up to this decision, Andre Santos played pretty well. He felt like he fit into that midfield very comfortably, and he didn't feel out of place. He never really made too many mistakes. It was a comfortable centre mid's performance. He made a few good passes here or there, a few good challenges here or there, but then he completely ruins that really good cameo by making this mistake and randomly passing it back straight to their player, and just, having such a heavy touch, which is so unlike him, that I have to put him in the medium, because he would have been in the good otherwise, and I have to demote him down to the medium box because of this mistake single-handedly cost us the game. And I know he's young, and I know he hasn't played a lot of football for this club, but you can't be making those mistakes at this level. It's not a thing that you can get away with. He will be punished for those types of things, and I think today should hopefully be a big wake-up call to Santos that, hey, when you get your chance now, you've got to take it better than that. You've got, you've got to be sharp for the entirety of the 90 minutes, not just 70 of them. Again, he is young. He will learn. This is a thing that we can bank on. We can bank on the fact that he's not going to make too many of these mistakes in his career for Chelsea. But it's unfortunate considering this was basically the first time he's been trusted to, play a full 90 in a Premier League game, and he's rather squandered that opportunity. Again, I won't be too harsh on him because, yeah, it's one of his only games, but you can't be doing that. That's why he's been put into medium. I want to get the negatives out of the way before I talk about some of the positives. So I'm going to talk about Malo Gusto next. Yeah, I gave him good credit last week because I think he played very, very well in the Lincoln game. And today he has done the complete opposite. The complete opposite in this game. He's come off the bench. He has not only made, just silly mistakes, and overall was pretty poor. The two major kind of ones that I want to point out that really frustrate me. The one where he's running through on goal and we have a chance to, make something happen. He's got basically no one near him and he just stops running and just allows the play to slow down. Really annoys me. You would think for a player that has not yet got his first goal for Chelsea that he would be bombing it down towards a goal and trying to get a shot off at least in that situation. But instead, he just decides to cut back, play it to Enzo Fernandez. Fernandez switches out to the left-hand side, and by the time all of that's happened, the move has broken down. Brighton have got their players back, and the chance is gone. And that's a really, really big chance for us that could have, again, changed the game. But alas. The other one I want to mention is this weird mix-up he has with Reece James for Welbeck's equaliser. Up until this point, we were defending relatively well. James had locked up Minte, who had moved over to the left-hand side. There wasn't many issues there until, for some reason, James and Gusto decide to swap positions. And this might be on James too, I'm not sure, but I'm putting the blame on Gusto mainly because he gets back there up against Minte. Minte easily beats him like he's not even there, puts the ball in, and Welbeck scores. And again, in comparison to James, who had been pretty much locking him up for the last 10-15 minutes as he'd been there since he swapped over, and then as soon as he's not there, we concede. And it's not good enough for a right back. It really isn't. And again, it frustrates me because I do think that in recent times, in recent months, Gusto has been much improved from, the horrible season that he just had. But again, he's coming back into these moments where he's just, showing those frailties, and it frustrates me because it's like I've been so eager to kind of praise you and so eager to, big you up after you've had such a poor spell, and now my faith in you is starting to wane because you are proving me wrong every single time at this point. Those are the main three things I want to talk about negatively in this game. I'm going to talk about some positive things. The first player or players that I'm going to be putting into the good box here are our fullbacks. And I mentioned him there briefly. Reece James, I think, was really, really good in this game. Again, locking up Minter on that left-hand side when he moved over. Obviously, being able to actually get up the pitch and put crosses into the box, which he did do for the assist for our goal. Very, very good cross. Little bit of luck on the deflection, but it probably would have gone into the same kind of area anyway, so no harm, no foul there. Cucurella, on the other hand, I think, again, was superb up against Minter today. Even though he didn't always, keep him back and say, hey, you're not allowed to run on goal, every time he did kind of get the better of Cucurella in a way, he recovered very, very well, managed to get it out for either a corner or a throw-in, and just made his life pretty much impossible to get past. If you look in that first half, despite the success that Minte was kind of having, success in big quotation marks there was no kind of attempt to put the ball into the box. There was no kind of end product from those runs down that side because Cuckoo was stopping them before they basically became an issue. Did think he needed to be a little bit calmer at times, and he was very close to getting a second yellow, I would say. I don't think that would have happened. I think it would have been very harsh if it did, but did need to calm it down a little bit. But you could tell he was really up for the game. And I think that's a good proof of that, especially after being booed all game as well. To keep your concentration whilst that is happening is very, very hard to do. So well done, Cuckoo. He did really, really well. The next player I'm going to be putting in here is our goal scorer, Enzo Fernandez. Now, I think that he had overall a pretty rough game in terms of how he was trying to make things happen. He was just getting fouled constantly by Van Hecke and by, other players in the midfield for Brighton. It was constantly him receiving the ball and then getting thrown to the floor, which is good. Drawing fouls is something we need. It helps alleviate the pressure, helps us get more attacks going. And I think that for the most part in that first half, we controlled the game very well, and he was kind of a big part of that, getting onto the ball, being able to move the ball around, not let Brighton get it for the large periods of that first half. We, at one point, had 80% possession, which is very wild against a Brighton team that is very good at keeping possession. And of course, ultimately, when we need him and when people have been criticising him in the last couple of weeks, he pops up with a goal to silence the haters as much as he always does, with a really, really good run into the box. That box-crashing Enzo that we have grown to kind of know and love now, getting in at the back post, putting the ball in with a nice header from James's cross, and ultimately getting us ahead in the game. And it's from that platform that we should have, made this a comfortable win. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out that way, but can't fault Enzo for being, being central to us getting ahead in the first place. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is not actually something that happened in the game particularly, but it's just something that is a good sight to see. and it's for the returns of Romeo Lavia and Benoit Badiashile from injury. Now, we've been getting a lot of injuries and a lot of suspensions and things like that in recent times, and these two coming back could not be at a greater time, honestly. It is genuinely so nice to see Lavia on the pitch. I think that in the small cameo that he did have, I think he was actually quite good. We kind of saw that classic Romeo Lavia, he receives the ball, knocks it past the player, tries to get away from the pressure type thing. We saw that from him. And even though he didn't get, a lot of minutes to kind of show what he can do, I think that we saw in that kind of little cameo that he got glimpses of what we can expect if he can stay fit. I really, really hope for his sake that he can stay fit. Now, we have been seeing resurgences in players under Enzo Maresca in terms of staying fit. Obviously, Fofana's recovered from his injury, and he seems to be, doing pretty well. James has been basically completely uninjured since Enzo Maresca came in, which is really good for him. And on the other hand, Benoit Badiashile, despite him being, a player that is quite polarising in this fan base, I would say, it's really, really good for us to finally have a left-sided centre-back back fit in the team. We have been struggling without Levi Colwill, and though I don't think Badiashile is going to, bring that same quality that Colwill does, because I just don't think he's as good as a player, no disrespect there, I just don't think he is. Having a left-sided defender there will massively help us out in the recent weeks. Obviously, we've got some really big games coming up with Benfica and Liverpool next, and him being fit and being able to play on that side is such a relief. Honestly, it's such a relief. He brings much more balance having a left footer on that side than it did than we do with someone like Chalobah or, Wes or whoever on that left-hand side instead. And in fact, I've actually realised there's a player that I forgot to mention in the good box, and I will mention him here now. Speaking of left-footed centre-backs, it's Yoro Hato. I think he had a really good cameo, considering he played in has basically played in that left centre-back role for the first time ever for Chelsea. I think he played very, very well. So bonus good point there. I think Hato had a good game. But no, yeah, it's just good to see Badiashile back, and hopefully we can have a bit of a solid defence without Trevor Chalobah now that he's been red carded, and with hopefully if Tosin's not injured for too long, hopefully he can come back. But yeah, a partnership of the two Frenchmen of Wes and Badiashile could be something that we see in recent games coming up. So that's something to look forward to too. Hopefully they can have a bit of a good partnership. We've never really settled into having one good partnership for a long time, because someone either gets injured or suspended or what have you. But yeah, hopefully those two can make something happen. Now, the final player going into the boxes, and it's another one going into the good box. I think you guys know this. He's the one player that I think can really come off the pitch and kind of hold his head up high, and that's Moises Caicedo. This guy, I'm gonna say the phrase, so everyone say it with me. You know what I'm gonna say. I run out of superlatives to talk about this bloke. He is just phenomenal. I genuinely don't know what more I can say. I don't know what more I can say. It feels like I'm just, a broken record talking about the same things all the time whenever it comes to Moises Caicedo, because every single time he puts his boots on, he has a great game. And even when he has a relatively poor game, and his standards are still better than, 6 out of 10 midfielders in the Premier League. But yeah, again, just being everywhere. Helping out the defence, always being back to, sweep up things when mistakes are happening. And that's the thing which he does, really, it kind of goes a bit unnoticed. We always talk about his tackling and his intercepting and, the way that he, is able to get past pressure. The thing I don't think a lot of people give him credit for, not only is his on-the-ball work, he's actually very good on the ball, which I think is evidenced by that fantastic pass that he plays through to Reece James before he gets his assist, which is why I always find it so disrespectful when people call him a shin kicker, because I feel like it's a bit racist connotations there, if I'm being honest, whenever they talk about Caicedo, because they don't talk about other players that do the same kind of thing who are white who do that, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But I just find it so disrespectful for a player that has so much quality on the ball that he just gets completely disregarded. But the main thing I want to talk about is his ability to, kind of just mop up for other people's mishaps. He's so good at anticipating danger and anticipating when our midfielders or our forwards are going to lose the ball or are going to make a mistake or are under pressure, and he always is the player that kind of gets there to stop that from becoming a problem. I think that we often don't see kind of a lot of our players as making so many mistakes because he's so good at kind of correcting them and making up for those mistakes that we don't ever really fault. We don't really ever get punished particularly for some of these mistakes higher up the pitch. Unfortunately, some of the kind of mistakes further down the pitch do not get recovered from because he's in front of them and he can't really get back to do that. But even at times he does sometimes come into the box and block shots and things like that as well. But he's just phenomenal. It was another good performance from him, and again against a team where he's getting booed every single time he touches the ball and things like that. It's a really good performance from him, and he always does put that kind of in. And he's the one player that I always feel like, regardless of what's happening in the rest of the team, whether we're getting red cards or silly refereeing decisions or making mistakes in the midfield or what have you, he's the one player that doesn't do that. He's the one player that is just locked in 9 out of 10 times. And for that, I will be putting him as my great today. I think that I think he was phenomenal in general. And again, if it wasn't for the red card or what have you, he probably would have been player of the match. Really unfortunate that the red card happens and ruins the game. But you guys can let me know down in the comments below your greats. I look forward to seeing who you guys voted for. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a like. It really helps out the channel and me. And for more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe as well. It's the best way to get these videos in your sub box and on your homepage. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever. And remember, football can be as simple as black and white.
Something ain't right, I'm drowning in the ocean. I'm still alive, but I feel the fall in my ocean. I lost the fight and now I'm finally floating, but I still try to hide my emotion. Who am I in pieces? I've been broken. It's black and white, but my eyes are fine.